This is a screencast review on rational numbers from earlier in the semester. So looking at the first one, which fractions are equivalent to -1 over -4? Select all that apply. So we need to remember that a fraction is division. So -1 divided by -4 is another way to say that. So we should know a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So looking here, A would be equivalent because A is positive. B would not be equivalent. Then look at C. If we take the opposite of -1/4, we get a positive. So we want to circle all positive 1/4. Then D and E would not work since they have one negative sign, and we know a negative divided by a positive would stay negative. So now the next one says, which fractions are equivalent to -1 over 3? Select all that apply. So I want you guys to take a second and think about this as division. We have a -1 divided by a +3. So we should know what the outcome is. I want you to take a second and then select your answers. Make sure you select all that apply. So what you should have selected was a -1 divided by a +3 is a negative number. Well, A is positive, so A would not be equivalent. B would not be equivalent because the denominator is a 4, not a 3. C would also not be equivalent because we have the opposite of -1/3 is a positive 1/3, and we want a negative. D and E would work because those are both -1/3. So you should have selected D and E as your answer. If you did not, go ahead and change that on your paper. Okay, moving on. Now we have which expressions are equal to 50 hundredths minus a -1 and 75 hundredths. Select all that apply. So what we want to do is we want to change our subtraction to addition. So we need to take the opposite. So I'm going to just write this out as best as I can. So 0.50. We want to change it to addition, and we want to take the opposite of a -1.75, which is a positive 1.75. So looking down here, A would not work because we want a positive 1.75. B would not work because the first number is negative. C and D would be your answer because they are both positive. So on this one, on your own, I want you to change the subtraction problem to addition and then select all that apply. Okay, so now that you select your answers, we are going to write this out. So 0.50. Subtraction means opposite, so we are taking the opposite of 1.75. So the opposite of 1.75 is a -1.75. So we need to make sure that number is negative in our expression. A wouldn't work, they're both positive. B wouldn't work because they're both negative, and we only want one negative. C would work because we have -1.75 and a positive 0.5. And also D would work because they're just switched around. Now moving on. Okay, now this is a word problem. It says the temperature of a liquid in an experiment is 12 degrees Celsius. The experiment calls for the temperature to change and it drops 16 degrees Celsius. What is the current temperature? What I would like you guys to do is write an expression. So our current temperature is 12 degrees Celsius, which is positive. Then it's dropping 16. So that means I need to put a -16 degrees Celsius, and then I need to solve using my number line. So then I go to positive 12, and then I need to go back 16. So if I'm at 12 and I go back 16 spaces to the left, my answer is -4 degrees Celsius. Now the next one, I want you to write an expression and then solve. So now that you wrote your expression, we have that it should be -2. So that's our starting point. And then if it's rising, so it rose 10 degrees, so we need to put a +10, and then it dropped 5 degrees, which means we want to add a -5. So this expression actually has 3 terms. So we're going to do it step by step. -2 plus 10, So if you add these two together, that should be a positive 8, and then a positive 8 plus a negative 5. You should have selected positive 3 degrees, for your answer. Okay, moving on to the next one. Next one is fill in the blank. So we have a negative 5 plus something will give us negative 7. Well, if we start at negative 5 on the number line, we know we need to move more to the left, so that means I have to add a negative number. So negative 5 plus negative 2 would move me left to negative 7. Next one, I'm going to start at negative 3, and then I'm going to go 10 spaces to the right. So negative 3 plus 10 will give me 7. Next one, 4 times something gives me a negative 16. Well, I know 4 times 4 is 16. But if I want a negative 16, I know a positive times a negative would give me a negative 16. Okay, next one, you're going to fill in the blank on your own. Select the correct answers, and then we will go over it. Okay, now that you solve these two answers, we have negative 4 plus what would give us negative 7. Well, we want to move left to get to negative 7, so I know I'm going to be adding a negative number. And then I'm going to be adding 3 because I want to move 3 spaces to the left. So negative 4 plus negative 3 is negative 7. Next one, you start at negative 2, go to the right 5, you will end up on positive 3. And then the last one, 2 times what is 10? Well, 2 times 5, but I want a negative 10, so I'm going to add a negative 5. Now that you're done, you are going to spend the rest of your time on Mathia X.